Hello.
Back in the office.
Isn't this nice?
It is. Comfy chairs. Sit back, relax, not worried about construction, 18-wheelers, gigantic drop-offs at the side of a mountain, and I don't have to watch you grip the side handlebar like you're on a roller coaster while I go 85 over a treacherous highway. Welcome aboard, folks. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. It is July 29th, 2021, and we are episode 499.
Almost done.
We're a month. Newsflash: we decided to retire on 500. So holla. No, we appreciate you. We appreciate you tuning in. Hope you had an awesome week so far. Again, let me say we're back in the office here in Chattanooga. We were on the road on Monday's podcast and last Thursday up in Ohio, hanging out for Ohio 70.3 with our athletes. And Mike and I both raced. Another big shout out to Ken Hammond, who made a comment on the post in our closed Facebook group yesterday, thanking us for his daily shot of dopamine. Ken, we love you, dude. You're a solid man.
Come on down, Ken.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, seriously, come down a bit. I mean, take over the reins and chat 70.3. We got a couple tips for you, like, not having it take 3.5 hours to start to swim. Anyway, we're not talking about that. Speaking of Chattanooga, we have our Ironman Chattanooga training camp that starts tonight. We've got 28 athletes coming from all over the country and town to get a little bit of running, riding, and swimming in this weekend to get prepped for the big race in September. And true July, August fashion, it's bringing the heat, baby, which is, I'm calling it right now. Okay, I know I shouldn't be calling it.
You're saying it's going to be nice and cool.
It's going to be, I didn't say cool, okay? And don't misquote me here. I didn't say cool. I said it's going to be cooler. Okay, it's not going to be normal. Yeah, it's not going to be as hot. I'm thinking highs in the 80s, which to me, dude,
it can't be any hotter. So I mean, that's not really a stretch of a bet.
That's not really. That's a soft one on me. I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit cooler.
Man, you're so optimistic sometimes.
I know, dude. You know me. Like one of us has to be. Well, but looking forward to having an awesome camp.
I said that in jest.
I know you did. With all of our friends and meeting new faces and seeing some of our athletes in. So that's going to be an awesome time. Awesome time this weekend. Looking forward to see everybody. Hope you all have a fun weekend. There's Calgary 70.3 is happening on Sunday. Got a lot of other awesome races happening around the globe. So we wish you all the best of luck this weekend. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We cover it all. We cover triathlon. We cover life. We cover everything in between. We'll do the occasional swim, bike, and run detailed podcast, do training overview, philosophy, tips and tricks to hopefully put you, settled in the right direction in terms of your own training. We'll do race recaps, race previews, have on the occasional, very rare guest, like the aforementioned Ken Hammond. Sometimes we'll go into our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group, if you want to be a part of that. Just answer one simple question. It's not that hard. Answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. We just want to make sure we're getting people in there who are going to be involved in the community. To be honest with you, I'd rather our Facebook community of awesome people be like 2,000 of engaged people who are participating in the conversation rather than like 6,500 of people who are just in there, have never heard the podcast, really don't get the vibe. Because listen, as if you haven't been able to tell already, we take a special breed. We are definitely not for everyone. But we try to be, we try to cover it all as much as we can. Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, been doing this for a long time. And we try to share our experiences, share our successes, our failures, and hopefully do that in a way to where you can avoid most of those pitfalls, mistakes, failures, learn from them, apply them to your own life, and be successful in your own right. We do no ads, we do no sponsors, but we have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, there it was.
There it is.
Yeah, got some new athletes coming in. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Things are going well. We had a good weekend. Mike's
a great weekend.
Team. The more I get into coaching, the more I start to see, I think 5 or so PRs this weekend out of my crew, which is really nice. I think things are going well.
Got a solid stable.
I've got some openings. It's got some
stallions.
Got a bunch of stallions in there. If anybody wants to come in, we're hiring. No, I just want to throw that out there that, if you got a race coming up towards the end of the year and you're a little bit kind of wondering what the heck's going on with your training. Yeah, a little shaky. Give me a shout.
Listen, 'tis the season to be shaky for a lot of people, whether you're
that's what we're going to talk about today.
It is. Yeah. Whether you're a seasoned athlete who's been training all year, whether it's, a person who thought they had their race schedule, detailed and lined up. And then listen, everyone kind of gets like that deer in the headlights look the closer they get to racing. Even if they've like nailed their training for the last 6 months, they have a coach, don't have a coach, are on a training plan, whatever it is. It's easy to be really confident, really, really far out from race day. Oh, everybody kind of has like a little, dude, I'm going to crush it. Everything you do, 2 mile run, #Ironman, 2 mile run, #Ironman. Then it gets up like mile 16, 17. He's like, oh, dude, I'm totally tired right now. This is not going very well. It's easy, you know, and then the closer you get, you kind of feel the pressure. You're like the proximity to the race heightens everything, and you start to question yourself. You start to feel, and listen, like the best thing that we can hear that you and I both, we talk about this all the time is, and we both had a few athletes comment on this week is, listen, if you've got an Ironman, you know, we got a lot coming up with, you know, Chattanooga, you got Wisconsin, just had Lake Placid, you got Florida, Arizona, Cozumel, Waco, Texas, you know, there's a lot of North American races here left, and then overseas as well. If you are healthy right now, you are ahead of the ball game. Oh, yeah. If you are healthy. And because that is one of the main reasons, again, we've talked about this on a number of podcasts, is why I'm such a huge fan of shorter type builds for Ironman, is because I think it's hard to keep your attention span for an athlete. You know, when you look at, I'm going to do a 20-week block for Ironman. Like your body's going to get used to it and it's going to kind of like flatline, but you got to stay fresh and you want to be healthy. And you got to look at things in more of like, I'd rather be like 90% of what I could be on race day and be fit and really, really fresh and sharp and mentally and emotionally engaged versus 100% overtrained. Which is where, like, one of my favorite quotes ever from a pro triathlete is Sebastian Kienle, who said, if you're confident on race day, if you're really confident on race day, you're probably overtrained. Talking about how the obsessiveness with like the covering the distances I've got to do, you know, my coach says I have to do 5 century rides. 3 of those have to be with 15-mile bricks. I've got to swim continuously 2.4 miles at least 6 times, and then I need to at least run 22 to 26 miles. Even if it's a run walk, I need to do that at least twice going in so I can have the confidence, dude, overtrained. And that, like, that's just straight fact. And it's interesting, obviously, more like listening to a pro be like, listen, if you're who should have no issue, right, covering the distance of race. They've done it hundreds of times probably, to hear them say, you know, hey, it's like, if you're that confident, you're probably overtrained, you know, which is going to lead to to having a very, very poor race outcome. And speaking of race outcomes, you and I both raced on the same weekend for the first time in 5 years.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's been a minute since you and I both participated in an event in a participatory fashion. I know we talked about it a little bit on the ride home on Monday, but you know, a lot of athletes race and a lot of athletes kind of, you know, do kind of self-reflection and things about things they need to go through or work on. And so I thought it'd be interesting if you're game for us to kind of dissect ourselves and think through, because I know you're the same way I am, man. You do something, you're like it's more. It just shows you what you can do better, right? Or like areas to focus on. And that's like something that I think is so important when you look at doing events and completing events. And I even mentioned this, I think, in one of the questions that I had to answer for the little coach bio we're putting out on the closed Facebook group was, you know, do you get nervous ahead of a race? And I was like, every time. Every single race I do, no matter what it is, I get nervous. And then how do I calm myself? I calm myself by saying, no matter what happens, great race or poor race, I'm still going to learn something. I'm still going to figure something else about myself personally, about myself as an athlete, about where my mindset is, about where I am emotionally, and how I'm able to push physically. And then on the physical side with my training, I'll be able to learn, what am I doing right? You know, what am I doing maybe not as right? What am I going to do more of? What am I going to do less of? What's the next phase going to look like? And to me, that's a win in of itself. Even if you don't think the race goes perfect, because listen, we only have like that one perfect race, like that unicorn that we forever chase, right? You know, like the great example is like Paul Finley last year at Clash Daytona. You know, she ran away from the field and just blew everybody away. And she even said at the race, she was like, "You just had one of those perfect days, like you never think are going to happen again." And then since then, a lot of her races have been less than probably stellar, and nowhere even near that. So it's just a good example, I think, of going into races with that kind of no such thing as pass or fail or success or not success. It's all about learning and applying and then trying to get better. And then what are you doing to make sure that you're getting better? Because if that's ultimately what you want to do, then there's things you need to, think through and apply. So are you game for that?
Yeah, I'm totally game for that. It was interesting you brought up that point about nerves, because I went up there without a bike, I brought my swim stuff to do a little
open water swim.
Little open water paddle.
Splash.
A splash.
Splash and dash.
Not much going on there, but I didn't have an agenda other than I wanted to get in a lake and do some open water swimming with no whatever goal in mind. So I was just cruising through the weekend. I wasn't even racing as far as I was concerned. And I knew I was going to do the run relay, but it never even really crossed my mind that much, to be honest. And then on race morning, after everybody got out of the water, I parked across the street, and then I got back down to the T2 and sat in the car for a little while, and I kind of got my run shoes on. I mean, it wasn't even like I was, there was no bags. I had none of that going on at all. And then I finally started going like, wait, and I started thinking I need a few things. And I was like, shit, dude, you're about to run a half marathon. I wasn't even really thinking about it. I mean, and I hadn't really trained up that much for it, but I thought I was pretty confident going in that I'd be okay. But it was weird how I was standing on that field waiting for her to come in on the bike, and I just started getting like, oh shit, man. I was like getting antsy, man. Yeah, I was really kind of getting that feeling. And I'm like, boy, I got to really I didn't want to go out and just, jog around. I wanted to see what I could do. And basically, everybody's like, well, you're going to be running an open half marathon. You should be able to go after it. But my mind, I was like, I was running that as I was running. I tried to run it as I would have run it as a half or a 70.3. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wanted to practice that in a race setting with this idea. Like if I was going out to just open half it, I probably would have went out a little harder, and I would have probably just, tried to hang on. But as it turned out, I mean, it got so damn hot that all my plans would have probably crashed and burned anyway. But
and you would have learned less, right? Because you would have gone out too hard and bonked, and you'd have learned just that you don't know proper pacing and restraint. I gotta be honest with you. I think my pacing was absolutely solid on that day. What I learned mostly was that I'm just not in that great a run shape yet. Because it wasn't so much my cardiovascular stuff, but I could. That was like the first time in training, actually, that I really started to feel my quads and hammies burning. And to me, that just said, hey, you just got to keep going. I mean, you got 6-7 weeks. That's the other thing we should talk about is that as we learned, I'm doing chat full, and hypothetically, let's say if you're going forward to learn and hypothetically doing a full later this year, is that kind of a good premise that we could take, or does it matter? The premise of what?
Well, I mean, as far as like, okay, what are you going to take from that 70.3? And then you have maybe, say you're doing chat with me or whatever. I mean,
there's everyone. I think this is a skill, right? That I think every athlete should practice and is to learn how to debrief yourself, right? And this is something that we press with our athletes. I was like, we want them to own their training and own their responsibility to what they do on race day. It's not, listen, if you think it's as easy as, oh, I went out and raced a half marathon or a 7.3, what do my numbers tell you? Like, they tell me very little. They tell me what your output was, right? The exact numeric value, heart rate, pace in the swim, heart rate, pace on the bike, power, same thing on the run. What it doesn't tell me is how you felt, how your nutrition was, how did your body feel, what were the signals you had, did you feel strong, did you feel weak, what felt good, well, if it didn't, what did you feel like you did right, what did you feel like you did wrong? Like, to me, those are all more important, right? And how you end up getting to what matters, right? And like you said, it's also different in what's next. What's next for you? Is it a full? Is it a half? Are you going back to short course? Also, like, where does it fall in your athlete, cycle of where am I trying to get better at? How am I trying to get better? Because listen, triathlon is hard enough already. You've got swimming, cycling, running, not as individual sports, but together. Then you have to do them in succession. Then you have that in nutrition and transitions and different courses and heat and the unpredictable nature of just racing in general. So if I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, all right, so if I put myself in your shoes and I said, all right, I got Ironman Chattanooga in whatever 8 or 9 weeks, I'm going out to run this, I definitely wouldn't have gone all out, right? Because the heat would have absolutely demolished you, and you would have learned that, again, you just, chose to not learn as much as you could learn. You just learned, or you reaffirmed the fact that we can't pace, and we wasted an opportunity, which is the number one thing I think you should all remember is when you're going into a race is the only way to waste an opportunity to have really a bad race is to learn nothing. Right, because even races that don't go perfectly, you should, if you're aware enough and you can do enough self-reflection, you should learn a lot to make you better. So if you're looking at you, like you want to think about, all right, how durable did I feel? Right, like if I'm looking at your race and I did that 13.1, it's really really hot, which you're probably thinking it's probably going to be like this in chat, right? More than likely, unless Robbie's right, and it's going to be a little bit cooler, it's going to be miserable. How durable did I feel? I don't necessarily need to feel fast because long course racing and Ironman isn't about how fast you go, it's about how little you slow down. So you think to yourself, all right, I maybe I average, like high 850s, I think, which is maybe what you came out to be that day. How did I feel when I got done? Could I have gone 2 more miles? Yeah, probably, at that effort. All right, so there's 15 in me. Now, if I slowed it down and ran 930s, was able to cool myself better, how much longer do I feel like I could have run from a durability standpoint at 930s? Could I have made it 18, 19? And then you're thinking, okay, well, if I do feel like I could do that in that kind of heat, then maybe I'm in a good spot, right? Because that's the thing that you think about when you run a 13.1 hard and you're averaging 730s or 8s, whatever your hard is, whatever your race 13.1 is, from a stress standpoint, how hard it is on your body, you can probably think, well, if I just eased it up, and as long as I've gotten some longer runs on the time of my feet, because your stride, your run cadence is different, then I could probably tackle an 18 miler pretty chill, right? Which is what it's going to be like on race. I think people are sometimes amazed when they get done with a full, how they're not nearly as sore as sometimes they think they are, which is again why track workouts are the most ridiculous thing ever. You ain't running like that on race day, baby. You're just not, because you don't have the ability to run hard and run in that stride on an Ironman, because you have to go for so long on concrete or pavement or whatever it is, and you've just biked 112 or 116, you just swam 2.4. You just don't have the energy to put forth the effort to really destroy your legs. And so, that's what I would look for if I'm looking at your how did you feel? Did I feel strong? Did I feel weak? If I did feel weak, from a durability standpoint, where did I feel weak? And if I did feel weak in an area, what does that say? And is it and I think this is the biggest thing with when you question and look at your output in an event is you have to be a realist and you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Was it a weakness that you expected? And you kind of be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm weak there because I skipped out on this or skipped out on that, or I missed a couple of these, and this would be more of an alarm if you're this close to a race day, is that you said, I didn't really expect that to be a weakness. And if it was, then the next question is, well, why? And everyone's like, oh, well, you look at the numbers. And no, the numbers are just what happened and what you're able to do. It doesn't take, you need to know the why. And so that's how I would kind of triage my own portion of what you did. I'm like, all right. The biggest thing to me is always I didn't expect it to be like that. And I either don't know the answer, or in kind of an honest, real brutally honest way, I kind of got what I deserved there. I was kind of hoping it'd be different, but to be honest, I kind of got I got what I got because I trained the way I trained.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I love that because those are nuances, right? That you can't, it's really difficult to figure out unless you really dive into it. And I started out with my slowest mile, which I was happy about. And then I got into, I was testing it too. I wasn't trying to blast it, but I was creeping it up in the middle around mile 6 or so. And I think I had a couple miles in the 8:15, 8:20 thing. And I was trying to hold on to 8:30, but about mile 9 or something like that, that same effort I was putting out was we talked about, I think last podcast, was translating into a 9-minute pace. So in my mind, I'm going, okay, post race anywhere. Now I'm thinking, well, I'm not bad, because if over the next 6-7 weeks, if I can theoretically kind of maybe move that thing about 30 seconds a mile or something like that. That's how I'm looking at it. It's like, okay, let's say that my top end, you know, in that type of race can be more in the 8:30, 8:15 range, and I can hold it. You know, I've got 7 weeks I have no question that I can get that to that point because I've been there before. But then all of a sudden your top end is a little bit lower, and that 9:30 then all of a sudden becomes easier. And, you know, like my typical Ironman marathon is 10-minute pace, but I would love to go, you know, in the mid-9s or something like that. So now I'm starting to think, and like you said, I just think it's the realism of running that marathon is kind of lost on most of us. You know, it's just the idea of holding a 9:30 for me is just very difficult. But I think if I can contain myself early, and I think I can hold that kind of thing. So, but I got some work to do, and I think that half that I just did was a perfect setup to think about it in that way. Because if I would have like cruised that 9:30, I'm sure I could. Like, I love what you said there about like, could I have gone like 8 to 18? So it's like, all right, I'm kind of in, like we talk about, in the ballpark as far as running a marathon, and then just, you know, sucking it up for the last 8 or whatever. But like, that's the learning part of this. It's just in the kind of like the feelings, and yeah, I just felt a little bit weak at that pace, but I held it okay for me, I thought, at the end.
And the two things I would say, just to kind of highlight, which again are more questions you ask yourself, not what the numbers say, is like, you might, because I think oftentimes we misuse the words want and think. You know, we interchange them like they're the same. It's like we want to believe we can hold it for that, but do we really truly believe, and what do we see that makes us think that we can? So is that true, or is it not true about ourselves? And the other one is, I think we underestimate, and it's not talked about enough, and it's, again, something you can't see, right? Is how deep were you able to dig? Because in long course racing, it is about digging deep. Like, yeah. I had a couple athletes like mention, like, hey, it looked like you were smiling coming to the finish line. I was like, oh, that wasn't smiling. That was a grimace. Like, I went to the well. Like, I dug. That was all performance aside, and I'll go into my race here in a little bit, was I was the most proud of my last 2.5, 3 miles, because it sucked. I hated every step of it. There was my feet hurt, my quads hurt, I was hot. You know, everything in my body was like, just walk it in, baby. Just walk it in. You're already going to finish. You're going to cross it. Let's just cruise it on in, man. Mm-hmm. Everything, every signal, they're not just your mind, but even your body's like, dude, I need to walk. Like, it's going to cool me off. It's going to feel so good. Listen, man, it's hot. Everybody else is walking. It's like people are going to give you like the, you know, an out. But I was like, no, just throttle. This is as much as it's going to hurt. So just let me go. Which is a skill you have to learn in long course racing, is like, you have to be able to find that spot to where I might not go faster, but I won't slow down that much either. If I can just endure, again, endurance sports, if I can just endure the amount of discomfort that I'm feeling right now. Because if I can hold it for this long, then I could hold it. You can't hold it infinitely, but it's about how long you can hold that level of discomfort. Because again, that is Ironman. That is like, you get to mile 18, 19, 20, you got a 10K left, and you're like, you can do that for less than an hour. Like, you can bear it. Like, you can just grin and bear it if you want to. You don't have to. You'll get a pass if you don't. People will be like, it's the marathon. But no, you don't have to do it. And so I think that is when you're triaging all the things that you did right or did wrong, or what really stood out to you, great or poor. It's like, it's not just what you saw physically, because physically is, again, it's just the output. It's what drives it, and the thing that pushes the buttons is, where's your head at? Where are you at emotionally? That's the one that makes the call, right? It's your quarterback is in your head and in your heart, and it pretty much drives the train and tells it what to do. The output is just, your body doing what you told it to do, or chose for it not to do. Yeah.
See, that was the thing. It wasn't I learned that, but I certainly relearned that, and I relearned that feeling, and it kind of was like, okay, here's what you gotta, and that's sort of how I'm starting to look at training again. I'm trying to get these feelings back, like that right to the edge but not over it, of on the bike kind of feeling, you know, the things that you're like, okay, this is where I can go for a long time, you know, just to find those places in your run or your swimming. I want to get into you now. And you said something to me that I thought was really interesting about the swim. We'll just start there, I guess, unless you want to start in setting up transition.
No, I'm going to hear. Dude, transition was simple, dude. I was happy with where I was in transition.
Yeah, that's right. You had a good spot. But like, but you know, when I asked you about your swim, you know, how it felt, and you said, yeah, you decided to basically roll that out at an Ironman pace versus maybe what your half was. And it'd been, I assume that's because, you know, it had been, you know, a while, and you just were kind of like wanted to feel that out.
I wanted to figure out things about myself during this race more than I wanted to, you know, write down a level of performance, right? And like a time. Like I just like to learn things about myself. And if it ends up being a great result, then good. I learned a lot. If it didn't, I still learned a lot. You know, I made the decision again for myself to swim it at an Ironman pace, mainly because that's what I did 2 years ago or 3 years ago before, when I raced what I thought was pretty well there. Also, I knew the temperature was going to be hot. I wanted to keep my core temp down as long as I could. I knew the dew point was going to be high, so I knew the RPE would be higher going into the swim. And I knew it can be a longer swim, so you're in the water a little bit longer. But to be frank, I also knew that, you know, while I've swam more, right, in the past 2 to 3 months than I had the previous 6 to 7, it still wasn't enough. You know, and honestly, I when I look back at my event and how I was able to put things, because it's all connected, if I had to label the top 2 areas of improvement, for me, it was addressing the need for more straight water when it's that humid. Because I talked this about before, I think on last Monday into you specifically, it was that I feel like that hurt me. I think I was about a bottle behind, which you can't, there's no such thing as getting behind and catching back up. It's just how bad are you going to or how much can you delay getting behind and its massive effect on the rest of your race.
Bleeding.
That's a perfect way to say it. It's just, you know, it's gonna, you know, plug the hole in the canoe. It's just like, let me get to shore as quick as I can and just, you know, prevent the outpour. But it all came down to the swim. Because, you know, I had swam more, but I mean, I didn't swim for 2 years. I mean, basically I didn't get in the pool. I got in the pool a little bit before, you know, like 4 or 5 times before I thought I was going to do Texas 70.3 last November. It didn't happen. Then I took some more time off. And then I think before April, when I ended up pulling out of the bike in the April Texas 70.3, I think before that I swam like 6 times in the endless pool for like 10 or 15 minutes, which is not a lot. And then look at July, you know, so again, that's one of those things where, you know, and I preach this as a coach, so I can't be a hypocrite, is you also look and be like, yeah, just because you swam, you know, a few things recently doesn't, like, we all tend to be prisoners of the moment about what we've done recently, not what we've done over the course of a period of time. Like, we all remember what we just did, not the cumulative effect of missed fitness or gained fitness. And so I knew it. I hopped on the bike, honestly, feeling like I was in some of a different kind of bike shape, because I trained for this race a lot differently than I have the previous. And I've always responded really, really, really well to volume, like maybe not even like 80-20 approach, maybe even like 90-10, like 90% easy, just putting in a lot of aerobic riding and then some work at threshold. That's always worked really well for me. But given the busy part of the season, how busy we've been with camps and traveling and just races and what we do, you know, as coaches, that just wasn't going to fit. And so I trained, my average volume was probably like 7.5 hours a week of training, which is almost twice what I had before. But I still felt pretty strong in the bike from a power output. But the first 10 or 15 miles of the bike, I think I was about 15, 20 watts lower than my goal. My goal was 225, 235. And I immediately felt like I didn't have it on the bike, which to me is always like, don't think you're just not going to have it, because I ended up raising it up to almost 220 by the end of the bike. It was more of and I honestly knew exactly why I didn't feel good. And it was because of the swim. And I thought I was generally I thought my legs were already tired. I thought my body was already more tired than normal because I still swim pretty well for not having swam a lot. But I think I was just feeling those effects. Not that I have any intention or ever of going in the pool and adding in kick sets, because that's not what the problem was. I think it was just I was down in energy from the level of preparedness, which is something that we preach all the time in terms of preparing for. It's like that you have to be prepared for the swim. If you want to bike your potential, you have to come out of the water feeling like your whole body didn't really do much. Didn't really do anything. So when I look at the next block of training I want to do, I need to continue to swim more and more and more and more and get back to where it's not just a 31 and change swim. It's a 31 and change that felt like nothing. And that's the thought. That's the feeling. The big differences in feeling. I think I was like 30 seconds slower from 2018. Same swim, no wetsuit, same course. But 2018, I was in some of the best swim shape of my life. So it was a 31 and change. Like I think I told you after that was like zone 1 or zone 2. Like it was one of the easiest swims I've ever done. Almost feel like I did it too slow. And then this one was probably a good bit higher. Wow. And so that was the first thing that I, looked at in terms of my overall fatigue, which is I think something that most people don't consider. When they don't
they don't.
It's like, the swim doesn't matter. It's all energy. It's all use of your body. And listen, and I'm not, obviously, as we all watch the Olympics and dream of like swimming like, Caleb Dressel, or even looking like, Caleb Dressel. It's, it's all about energy. But I was only in the water for 31 minutes. There were a lot of people who were in there for 45, 50, or twice as long at an hour. Like, how much energy and output that takes out of you, that just carries on to the rest of what you do. And so that, to me, that was the first thing. So I had to just look in the mirror and be like, yeah, I mean, that's just the truth. Like you didn't swim enough. That was the one you tended to not do over the rest of them from a time standpoint. So you got to be okay with it. You can't be like, oh, I shoulda. Like, really, should you really have done better, or you just got what you got? And for me, it was, you just got what you got. And that's kind of what, I felt got me to where on the bike was. And then again, I think the bike thing for me was more of a nutrition standpoint. I let my body warm up. I started to feel pretty good. I do think I got behind, but in one more bottle of fluid when I went back to my bike after the race was over. I think I definitely got caught up in some of the moments and didn't take in as much as I should have, because I had way too much left over. And I think I should have gone straight bottle of water there to counteract the dew point and the humidity. Run wise, can
I?
Yeah, stop there for a second. Yeah,
because I'm just so fascinated by this swim thing, and so many people. It is that thing about the swim, just get it short, get it out of the way, and then you get on the bike, and that's when the real work happens. And then, but this combination of, if you're that aware of that at this level. And I don't think most people even think about that much. I mean, they get out of the water and like, woo, I made it. I survived, But like, that's not how you're supposed to feel, no. And that's not how you're supposed to feel off the bike either. And I can't, I mean, if I had a dime for every time somebody had a, really tough swim and then maybe a bike that like beat the crap out of them, and then their marathon or their half marathon didn't go well, and they're like, Coach, we got to work on running. I'm just like, what? No. We got to back this up here, man. You got to get off that bike feeling like you can run, or it's just going to it's just not going to happen. I don't care. I've had plenty for me, I've had plenty of races where my run has just been on point going into it. And I've had races where my run was a little bit, lacking in volume and things like that. I mean, over the course of the 7 Ironman I've done, I've had both. And all my runs have been the same, basically. And the point is there, and that's why I'm back on this bike swim thing, is just like, you got to build your engine to get through that bike and the swim, or your run. You can be a good runner, and obviously certain people have a little bit, but still, even them, I would imagine, wouldn't have the run they would like, even if they're good runners. You know what I mean?
It's all about when do you want to put all your chips in, right? Like, and if you, like you said it, like, and that was one of my things with looking at the race in all the parts connected together. to me at all, because again, like, yes, I swam some, but I still like didn't put in near the yardage that I'm normally going to put in before a race when I'm putting in the, my normal volume. It's because one of the things I noticed about myself too was that I was, even after the first like 10 or 12 miles, I was uncomfortable with my arms. They were just fatigued from the swim. So being an aero wasn't as comfortable anymore for me, because my arms were out of swim shape. Like, yeah, I still swam fast, relatively fast against the field, but I was like, there you go. And I was telling myself as I was riding, I was like, see, you got to swim more. See, everything to me was pointing to, see, you got to swim more. See, you got to swim more. You're gonna have to make more time this next round to, no matter what, you might have to change things up, because what happens is a lot of athletes think the reverse, right? They think, like you said, and they're not wrong, right? The run is the most important, right? It is. But if you think about it in terms of, well, I can just kind of slough off on the swim or slough off on the bike because it's all about the run, you're thinking about it, bass backwards. It should be, I would in all honesty, I would rather have only ran a fast, like 13 or 15 mile run, like a fast, feeling crisp, and put in so much cycling and so much swimming that I know when I get off the bike, I'm going to be ready to absolutely get after it on the run, versus, I can probably swim once a week and just make it easy and just do whatever. And then, I need to ride long, but it's all about the run. So I don't need to ride that hard or ride that much. But I'm going to do a lot of, like 18, 20, 22 miles where you're just practicing being the same speed for a long period of time. Well, guess what? Like, it's just like the common thing. Like when people understand or can't wrap their brain around why they're so much slower on the run or on their ride, or can't put the same power out, guess where it all starts? It all starts when you put your face in the water, because that's when you start to spend your energy. You see it all the time in training, but no one puts it together on race day. Is that like when you wake up one day and you're like, I'm really feeling it. The next day, okay, I'm really feeling it, but I expected to be fatigued because yesterday was a pretty hard ride or whatever, so I expected it not feel good. But then it's like people go into races and they're like, I just can't, you just swam 2.4 miles. You're in the water for an hour and a half, like putting out solid energy. Then you have to get immediately out and get on your bike. And you wonder why you weren't able to put out the same amount of power. Like, you ain't done that right before. Like, yeah, like you can almost get away with like the time for a 70.3. But if I think about it, if I had to swim 2.4 then on the bike, I'd have been not in a good spot. I've been that twice as tired, right? And that's how you have to think about it. Again, getting off the bike in a way to where you're like, listen, no matter what, after 6 to 9 hours of exercise and getting up at 3:30, you're not going to feel spry, right? You're not going to feel fresh, but you shouldn't be like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this run. Or at mile 80, you shouldn't be like, I can't wait to get off this bike. Because to me, you should already just go ahead and assume I'm not running well today. Because if you're already thinking those thoughts 10 to 15 to 20, 30 miles out, 10 miles out of some plane from getting on the bike, guess what? You're not going to run nearly what you think, because it all comes down to how you started your day and how your energy chips, dominoes started to fall throughout the day. Not just from an energy standpoint, looking at me specifically, but also from how did I fuel those, that expense for the day? And did I fuel it correctly? Or did I end up getting to the point to where I was, like you said, you're just trying to stop the bleeding, right? You're just trying to stop the hole in the performance canoe from filling it up to where you have to slow down so much you have to walk. It's just like, I need to, and that's how I felt the last 2 miles of run. It was like, dude, if you don't get it over with now, then it may take you longer, because at some point you're going to not be able to stop the bleeding. It's like, you're going to get so hot and so done. You're going to have to, it's going to be irreversible at some point. And it all starts at the beginning. Yeah. All starts at the beginning.
And there's an interesting point there, because obviously you've been racing for a long time, many, many years, and done many, many races. And I think what happens, at least in my, because I think that just happens over time. And I'm in more of your camp now, because like, I think in the early, part of my racing career, I would get out of that water just absolutely, beat down, obliterated. But it was the adrenaline drive, right? So that's what carried me. I think that adrenaline can carry you sometimes. And at some point, like you're like, okay, I'm sick of using adrenaline to just get through this thing. So you want to get it to a point where it's comfortable coming out of the water, and then on the bike, like you said, that's great. Like if you get to mile 80 or 90, just like begging to get off that thing, if you get off and you want to throw it in Lake Monona or wherever you're racing the bike, just get rid of it. I don't ever see it again. That's probably a pretty good sign that your run's going to suck.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
because those negative thoughts come from negative physical feelings, right? So, like, you're grumpy because you're hungry. Like, it's your body. It's like, that's why you're, and it's just one of those things. Again, like, if you have to look at, that's why the sport is so complicated, but it also so awesome, is because there's just so many things you have to address. They're all connected in one way, shape, or form. You can't just look at things individually. And that's like, as I was like trying to think through, like, there was a lot of world championship slots there. I could have taken one, people ask like, where do you want to go? It's in like 5 weeks. Yes. Would it be fun to participate and go out and race the 70.3 world? Sure. But is it going to get me where I want to go faster or slower? And the answer is slower, because I knew this week was going to be a wash. And then we got another mini camp in like 2 weeks. How much improvement am I going to see in 4 or 5 weeks? Am I going to feel like I made noticeable growth and I was able to apply the lessons that I learned through finishing? Because I wasn't disappointed. It was just, it highlighted some areas that I know I have to work on. So is doing or not doing an event going to get me closer to seeing the resolution or the different solutions I had for being better? And the answer to me was no. It's actually probably going to impede that progress, because it's going to take that. So to me, that was my answer, was yes, it'd be fun to do and I would enjoy it, but I just want to get better. And I don't want to show up to the next race until I've at least had an appropriate amount of time, right? And that's to be like, oh, I got a redemption race. Give me like 2 weeks. I'm like, what the hell are you going to see in 2 weeks, man? Like, unless it was just blatant, irresponsible execution, right? It had nothing to do with pacing or energy or improper training or things addressed. If it was just a blatant, irresponsible, use of restraint, then maybe, you might be able to see a summer, but still different course, different conditions, different person, whatever it is. It's like, I just want time, like, because I like racing, but I love feeling like I'm truly getting better. So I wanted more, like, I just want more time to apply things and get better and not put myself farther behind by trying to rush through things and, taking a week off and taking this. Like, I just want to get better and apply the things that I learned about myself from a training standpoint and be like, all right, now we do this. That's all I thought about all week. It's like, all right, do this. I'm not doing jack this week. We got camp. I'm just relaxing. I'm kind of just like, putting the pieces together of like how I want the next few blocks to look like. Is like, all right, well, this worked, this didn't, move this, move that, move this, be honest about this, be honest about that, and let's see what happens. To me, and that's because I'm a coach. Like, that's the way I think anyway, is like putting all the pieces together and the planning and the strategy. But from the athlete standpoint too, because that's what I was that day. To me, improvement in racing is so much about honesty and like really looking yourself in the mirror and thinking and feeling, just like, oh, well, it was, this, it was that. I'm like, but really, was it? Like, did you, because I asked athletes this sometimes. I asked an athlete 2 weeks ago in Olympic, I just didn't have it on my run today. Like, I just didn't have it. Did your legs not have it, or did your head not have it? Which is an honest question I think everybody should ask themselves. Because some things you can't train. Some things you can't program in sessions. Some things you can't, you don't see your form or your, acute training load or your chronic training load and training peaks. All these things, like, I love this data and this, this and that. And then half of them can't even use their Garmin or like change data fields. But the things you can't see are like, but is it just because you refuse, or you can't, or you haven't figured out how to break through that I'm in pain, keep going, right? Your first thought is to slow down and pull it back some. Did you have to? No, right? Like, that's something you can't put in training, because you can't put in a training plan. You can't progress that physically. It's a mental thing. And that's something I think we all have to ask ourselves too, is like, when you're being honest about your performances, because we all love to blame it on, that's what coaches get. The coaches get, they don't get any of the praise because the athletes, you get that, but then you get the negative feedback. It's like, we need to be honest with ourselves. Like, what did you do right or do wrong? And how can we get better? And how can you get better to make this a better progress and not an easier, but a more efficient process throughout the rest of your next training cycle?
Mm-hmm. I just was thinking about I've said it a lot that I've been doing a lot of, walk around training and a lot of longer stuff with, longer walk, whatever. I've just been kind of messing around with that. And my legs felt fairly strong in this way, but going back to like something else I learned, and I think I didn't walk at all, and I think I rushed the aid stations. And so in retrospect, I mean, because you know how aid stations, I feel like they kind of like raise my, I don't want to say anxiety, but there's something that goes on around them. You kind of feel like you're grabbing, and it was kind of a rushy situation, especially if you're not stopping or walking through it. And upon reflection, I'm wondering if maybe taking, a little time to walk through it and get the cooling I needed, and maybe get a little hydration without, just flying in or forcing it in on the fly, if that might not have given me a little bit of in-race recovery that I always talk about, and, made for a, longer ability to hold my pace. You look at that and you're like, if you'd have walked like 15 seconds through the aid station, made sure you got exactly what you needed instead of like missing a cup here and there, and then like, whatever, I'll get it next. Because I did that once. I missed the whole thing, and that mile was the hottest mile of the day. I mean, you can really tell if you're not cooling down. So, and I don't really think it would have affected my overall pace, because I think you just, if you get that little break, I think you can naturally kind of be stronger and pick it up. Like at the end, I had nothing to go with. I dug about as deep as I could go, and I had no more. But I wonder if like just a few of those aid stations, if you just kind of chill, relax, instead of this panicky kind of like, you end up, you look like sometimes you end up running out of an aid station at your fastest pace because you're trying to get out of the way, and like there's a lot of people around, and it kind of jacks your energy up a little bit. So it's because it's little things like that.
You nailed it. Like people get to an aid station, their first thought is, I better hurry, right? Because I don't want to lose time. Yep. Instead of thinking, I better get all the shit I need, right? It's like, it's like walking into a gas station versus walking into Costco. You're like, hey guys, give me here. I'll take a beef jerky and Chex Mix and check me out. Have the 24-hour energy drink done. Costco, you're like, let me take my time, a little bit of this, let me sample this, a bit of that. It's not a time to dawdle, but it's a time to recognize that I need this. Because if I don't, then in 2 miles, I'm not going to be walking the aid stations. I'm going to be walking to the aid stations, because I'll have absolutely bonked and I can't get it back. That's it for today.
That's it for today.
No, listen, I think it's a skill that every athlete should learn, coach or not coach, is to do solid self-reflection, which is, I think, a hard thing for people to do in general, is to recognize the things that they did do right, the things they didn't do right, where they can do better, where can they, because it's not just like, how do I get better? It's like, well, what are you willing to do to get better? Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, how do we? I'm like, well, are you willing to change? Are you willing to do something different? Are you willing to make that, those sacrifices, or to do this or to do that? And because the answer is no, you're just going to keep getting what you get. Did you push hard enough? Did you proper pace? Did you fuel right? Like all those, there's like 20 questions you should ask yourself before you're like, so what do the data tell you? That's what I should do. I should make like a list of 20 questions to ask yourself before you even ask about what the numbers said, because those are what are going to tell most of the story, is how you felt. So ask yourself those things and be realistic. Because if you really, really, like the best athletes on the planet are realistic and honest in their assessments of themselves. They don't BS. They're just like, I just wasn't good enough today. I wasn't good enough because this, and I need to figure out why. It takes like really deep, honest, blunt self-reflection on how to get better. Not just, like you said, having that far away from, because everyone's confident, when they're everyone's really, really, really confident, 8 months out from a race. And then everyone is all in on getting better 24 hours afterwards. It's all the stuff that's in between that makes you better for when you get to the race the next time. So focus on those things. As always, we love you. We appreciate our listeners, as we always do, and you giving us a chance. Follow us on Instagram, C26 Triathlon. Also go over to our website. It's C26triathlon.com, and is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. I think the majority of our coaches have open spots right now, so look them up, check out the bios, and reach out. I don't think we have any open spots for any camps the rest of the year. We have one spot left for June camp next year.
What about Texas?
But we have a Ironman Texas camp, which is not just for Ironman Texas. It's just a good early season camp. Anyway, if you have early season Ironman, that's in March in the Woodlands. Check that out. We do have, I think it's 50% full, if not more already, which is again next March. So look that up. It's on the website as well. If you have any questions about camps or booking a hub visit or coming to see us, getting a swim analysis done, you can email Summer at c26operations@gmail.com. If you need anything from Mike specifically, he is at crushingiron@gmail.com. And as always, if you need anything from me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
Yep, and we've got pink water bottles in, so go to the store and get some water bottles.
The online store.
Online store,
not your neighborhood store.
Or you can come into the hub. We got them here.
Come see us. It's out of Vegas Street.
Safe shipping.
All right, dude, I'll see you later.
All right, man. See you.